I need to talk to you folks about something in this lovely cold morning of ours. It's called accountability. Accountability in this country is selective. It is inconsistent, and it depends entirely on who is doing what from whom. We've got an EFF member threatening white South Africans on camera 4 days ago now. And there's complete institutional silence. Nothing has been done about this public threat to a race of people. We've got tens of thousands of foreign nationals being relocated, being repatriated, and being repositioned ahead of tomorrow's march. There is an attack on white South Africans and foreign nationals in South Africa, and nothing is being done. And then we've got a businessman who's been dodging the Matlanga Commission since February, which is crazy, using every medical emergency in the book, and who just got a final warning: testify or face prosecution. So we got 3 stories and we got 1 thread. But the first thread I want to start with, which is actually the single thread I mentioned just now, is the silence that says everything about this recent controversy. You see, this story made me the most frustrated this weekend. And I think if you're someone who is honest with yourself and doesn't judge on emotion, it should frustrate you too, regardless of your race, regardless of your politics, regardless of where you even stand when it comes to immigration. 4 days ago, a man describing himself as a leader of what he calls the EFF's military wing — I also didn't know that existed — he posted a video on camera. It's not a rumor, not an allegation. He posted on camera, without blurring his face, demanding that white South Africans leave the country before June 30th, along with the foreigners. He said, pack your bags and leave, mabahambe. That's a threat on camera against an entire racial group in a country that has hate speech laws, in a country that has the SAHRC, the South African Human Rights Commission, whose entire reason for existing is to respond to these types of things. In a country where less than a year ago, that same SAHRC took Malema to court, equality court, over comments made at a political rally and got a hate speech ruling. 4 days have passed now. Not one minister has condemned it. Not one official statement from the SAHRC. At least if they responded a few hours after the controversy, would have been like, oh, okay, they were at lunch and then they saw the video and then they responded. A whole weekend. This is some long lunch, don't you think? And the thing is, the EFF is not even distancing themselves from it, even though they should be the first to say, this person does not represent us. Not the presidency, not the acting minister of police, who's been very vocal about everything else related to June 30th. They also haven't said anything about this. Complete institutional silence. Now, let me ask you a question I've been sitting with all week. Let's say the tables were turned. So if a member of any other party, any other organization, stood on camera and told black South Africans they needed to leave the country before a specific date or else, what would have happened within 24 hours? I'll tell you what would have happened as a black South African. The SAHRC would have issued a statement within hours. Hours. The news would have spread like wildfire, like this. There would have been emergency press releases from all corners. Even Gayton McKenzie would have talked about it. There would have been calls for arrests. There would have been social media trending for 2 days straight. Does anyone remember when Open Chats made the awful joke about colored people on Open Chats podcast? Remember how quick they responded to that? Why is nobody responding to an EFF member publicly threatening white South Africans? Open Chats got attacked more for a bad joke about colored people than this EFF dude who threatened white people. If the tables were turned, if it was a white person saying this about black people, there would have been calls for an arrest. There would have been countless press conferences. There would have been social media trends. Ministers would have been falling over each other like Jenga pieces to be the first to condemn it the loudest. The person's organization would have immediately suspended them or issued a full apology. The EFF themselves would have been first in line to call it unacceptable if it happened to a black person. And it's not even speculation. We know this because we've seen it happen. We have a reference point. The response is established. We know exactly how this country's institutions mobilize when certain people make certain threats against certain groups. Does anyone remember when the black student in university found a white student urinating on his stationery in campus? I've forgotten the name of the campus and the exact year. I think it was 2021. Remember how quick that spread? I think that white student was expelled. There was video footage of that happening. And the response was just so quick. But nothing happens when it's the black guy threatening the white people. And here, specifically, we've got 4 days of nothing to prove my statement. Now, I want to be precise here. This is not me defending the content of what this man has said. His threat was wrong, full stop. It was hate speech by any reasonable definition. No South African of any background should be told to leave their country based on their race. Not foreigners, not white South Africans, not anyone. That is not a political position. That is a basic human rights position. But precisely because it was wrong is why the silence is so damning. If you believe in the principle and the SAHRC and inequality and every minister who's ever spoken about hate speech, if you actually genuinely believed what they say about principle, that threatening an entire racial group is unacceptable, then that principle has to apply every single time to every single group, regardless of which direction the threat is pointing at. Correct me if I'm wrong, by the way.